Do you have a desire to sell sports cards for income? Well, this video is for you because over the past 5 years, I've personally completed over 60,000 sports card transactions with many collectors and investors across the world. Selling sports cards is a blast, and it's provided a great stream of income for myself and my family. But I've been on the other side of that learning curve where you see all of the years, the sets, the players, the parallels, and the various platforms, the sales methods, the processes, and everything else in between. And it's completely overwhelming. I get it. So I'm going to spend a few minutes giving you a high-level overview of how to approach selling sports cards. These are some things that we've learned the hard way over the years, and I'm happy to save you some of the frustrations. But I want to give you 2 disclaimers. First, it's extremely important to know that overall, sports cards are a depreciating asset. If you take 98% of the players across any of the sports, you'll find that nearly all sports cards will decline over a long time horizon. This initial decline is usually the steepest during their first few years in the hobby, which is contrary to what you might think. It's very much like buying a new car. The second you drive it off the lot, you lose money. Opening an expensive hobby box can be even worse than that. But you need to understand that cards depreciate because it heavily influences how you make decisions in a reselling business. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to this overall rule, and we'll talk about them here in a little bit. But don't lose sight of this overarching theme that has always existed in the hobby. Second, if you make good decisions, I believe that sports cards can be one of the safest and most lucrative reselling options in existence. You're like, wait, I thought you just told us that they are a depreciating asset. I did. But here's the beautiful thing about sports cards. You see, the market is unbelievably huge and it continues to grow every single year. In fact, last year, eBay announced that the collectibles market accounted for almost $13 billion in GMV. That's nearly 15% of the overall gross merchandise value on all of eBay. And they said that 1 in 4 buyers on eBay has purchased at least one collectible item. That's incredible. Sports cards are the largest part of that collectibles category, and the trajectory continues to shoot upward, thanks to lots of outsider money, new collectors, and a fresh wave of new tech and platforms entering the market. Sports cards reselling is safe because if you learn how to do it right, you can let someone else pay for the depreciation, and you can capitalize by building on a business of predictability and take advantage of a massive market. And lots of that exists in sports cards. So now that we've established those 2 points, let me tell you who I am. I've been around the hobby for a long time. As a collector for nearly 35 years, as a reseller for nearly 20 years, as a podcast host / content creator for nearly 10 years, and the host of a show called Chasing Cardboard, which you may have seen for over 3 years. Sports cards have been at the core of my daily routine for a long time. So much so that I can relate to nearly every scenario that we run into when we're on the road filming our show. But within all this experience, I focused extremely hard on filtering out the right principles for a reselling business. I have a family, I value my time, and I want to make sure I do it right. But I'm also a collector, and I've built a pretty modest collection of Kansas City Royals and Mizzou Tiger players. But again, I'm primarily a reseller, and because I resell, I've personally helped thousands of collectors, maybe like yourself, build their own collections through my reselling. This is a pretty fun element of the journey, and it makes the grind worth it, if you ask me. But enough of me. Let's dive into this, starting with the buying. If you are going to be successful at the sports card reselling game, you are going to have to be an excellent buyer. This is the single most important strength that you'll want to build inside of your business. It's been said that every good sales transaction starts with a good purchase. I believe there are 8 primary ways that you can acquire sports card inventory, so let's quickly cover them in order in terms of maybe easiest to the most difficult. The first one would be your own collection. That's obvious. You have cards, you want to sell them. Second would be garage sales or local community. Least intrusive, and it's more common than you think. Number 3 would be thrift, Goodwill, antique, pawn shops, and those really come down to timing. You can find items at stores like this, but again, it's really all about just walking in at the right time. 4 would be retail stores. You got Walmart, Target, and others. This is normally reserved for sealed retail products, but it still can be an outlet for inventory. 5th would be direct from consumer, like collections, singles. You meet the buyer, you do the deal. It can be a trade, it can be a straight purchase, or anything in between. You can find those deals really in a variety of ways. Number 6 would be online marketplaces. Think eBay or other online marketplaces. Tons of inventory, varying prices, some experts, some novices, but inventory will be plentiful. Number 7 will be card shows and card shops. You're buying from experts here, so margins and opportunities will be slimmer, but inventory will be focused. And then finally will be distributors, which is really reserved for dealers, but over time there could be an opportunity to build a distributor relationship for yourself to acquire sealed product. Each of those has their pros and cons, but outside of distributors, these are all possible for you to do right now. Whether it's single cards, collections, sealed boxes to open, there are plenty of ways to acquire sports card inventory. It doesn't mean that they all provide profit potential, but they are all attainable. So, as you can see, sports cards in general are very abundant, which leads to a very important question about buying sports cards. What is the goal when you're buying as a sports card reseller? Well, if you ask me, it's pretty simple. You want to buy with the idea of reselling with a profit margin. Now that margin is going to depend on a variety of things that are very specific to you. Things like the value of your time, how long it'll take to sell, the fees you need to pay, and many other things. But unless you're looking to buy for your own collection, you have to be able to identify margin. For me, it varies on the size of the collection. With high-end cards, I can get away with a 20 to 25% margin. But on high volume, larger transactions, 50% margins are really the baseline, and that's very normal. Reselling ultimately is a numbers game. It's important to keep the inventory snowball moving downhill, or else it'll melt away and leave you pretty frustrated. The best way to keep things moving is if you buy with realistic margins. Earlier this summer, we put out a video showing our buying strategy and how we look at negotiating. You can check it out after you finish this. I'll put the link in there, but it also includes a link to my buying calculator, something I think you might really enjoy if you're really serious about this. But back to margins. The best buyers are the ones that understand where the opportunity is. And to do that, I believe you have to have really one of 3 things in the sports card world. The first thing you have to have is a disproportionate knowledge of cards or subsets or maybe even players. In other words, you need to be able to build knowledge or have knowledge of particular eras, sports, or subsets and be an expert in that category. To do this, it takes time and it takes commitment, but it can definitely be done. I'd recommend focusing on areas of the hobby that intrigue you or maybe within the circle of things that you personally collect. That'll make things a lot easier when it comes to building knowledge. In addition, knowledge will help you understand the right way to approach specific cards. For instance, vintage cards are a completely different beast than modern cards. And within those vintage eras, or maybe even modern eras, there are plenty of nuances with parallels and with players and with sets, and even with the timing of your selling. Knowledge is vital either way, but supreme knowledge will give you a very important edge when it comes to looking and buying and building margin. Number 2 would be a unique ability to assess the condition of cards and understand how to add value by grading cards. There are some very successful resellers in the space who simply focus on buying ungraded or raw cards and submitting those for grading to build margin. The beauty in this particular model is that you don't have to be a specific expert on eras of cards. You just need to know certain players, maybe a few of their top cards, and be really good at buying at good prices and good conditions. Now, grading can be a finicky game to play because you're putting much of your margin and your success into the hands of a grader who's a human being. And we know, if you watch any other videos on grading, it can be an up and down weird market. In addition, you have to put a bit more capital on hold while you take investments, grade them, and wait for their return. But if you do it well, it can be done very profitably. Although be very careful because the 2020 to 2022 sports card inflation era continues to jade many resellers. It's not an easy game anymore. Number 3, a very streamlined selling process. This gives you a clear advantage on the selling front and allows you to look at something and process things very quickly. The number 1 reason you'll be able to buy large collections at good prices is because the seller understands the amount of work it'll take to sell. This is real, and really you want the seller to feel that pain. If you are buying from someone who is a reseller or is considering doing it, you need to educate them on the work that goes into this because it's a beast of a job to sell entire collections. And if you want to have an advantage, you need to be very good at your own selling model. A good way to start is to subscribe to this channel and follow what we do here. We put a lot of videos out and we have a lot more coming on how we process and sell things. And we provide a lot of tips on just running your reselling business in general. But the better you are at understanding your own selling process, the better you'll be at paying good prices and negotiating with your time in mind. You'll stop getting excited about cool stuff and you'll start thinking about how many hours it's gonna take you and what you need to optimize your time. It's so nice being able to know exactly what type of process that you're going to go through when you're purchasing a collection. That'll pay huge dividends as you start negotiating deals. Okay, so there's 3 tips on buying and some advantages I think you can build very early on. Before we talk about selling, let me just say one thing about the money involved in starting this journey of selling sports cards. 10 years ago, I'd question a decision to spend $50 on a couple of blaster boxes, let alone buying thousands of dollars in larger card collections. Now we purchase expensive collections because we've both built the expertise and also built the capital to make it happen. Each of you has your own journey that you can start anywhere, truly. You could start with $20 and you could start learning the game in a small capacity. You could also start with $1,000 and you could really dive into the sports card reselling full on. It really is up to you and the budget that you have to work with. Either way, the game doesn't change. You still have to buy smart, you have to have an advantage, and you have to learn how to sell what you bought. Regardless of where you're at though, my 2 pieces of advice in buying would be, first, don't buy with debt. Use cash that you're willing to invest in your journey. And maybe even lose. You never know what'll happen. This will give you more freedom to make better, patient decisions. Second, agree to reinvest all of your profits back into your working capital for the first 6 months. This mindset, regardless of the types of things you're selling, is magical. When you start to see your working capital build up, it motivates you each and every day to keep crushing it. But if you immediately go spend your profits on something not making you money, it'll suck much of the life out of your excitement for the journey and it'll have you questioning if what you're doing is successful. And staying excited and focused is really, really important in doing this right. Okay, let me go grab a coffee. We'll come back and we'll talk about the selling part of the game. I love selling sports cards, truly. I enjoy every bit of the selling process, from the time you scan a card to the listing part, to answering questions, to the packaging. All of it is a blast to me. But I'm gonna warn you, sports card buyers are very particular. If you expect to just type a couple words on eBay, snap a photo on your phone, and get top dollar on items, you're in for a rude awakening. Selling sports cards is very much a journey that requires you to invest in learning it. Nuances really do matter. Now, back to my point about knowledge. You definitely need to take some time to just understand things about cards, how to title them, how to talk about condition, how to talk about parallel subsets, inserts, etc., how to maybe scan and photograph your cards correctly. Missing some of these nuances can cost you a lot of money and potentially very important profit margin that is crucial for your business. In addition, you really don't want to deal with collectors who are looking for reasons to not buy from you. That's a conversation for a completely different video, but just don't neglect little details. So where can you sell sports cards? I'm going to break these into 2 categories. One category where you control the outcome, the second category where someone else controls the outcome. Either one could potentially work for you. It really just comes down to what you're trying to build. Let's start with the first category. You want to control the outcome. That means that you want to sell cards yourself and you are looking to build maybe a brand in all of this. The main ways to do that are, number 1, eBay. This is the largest online marketplace in the world. We've talked about this already. It's really the largest sports card marketplace in the world, and it's not even close. eBay has made many resellers a lot of money. You could only focus on eBay for the next year, and you'd probably just scratch the surface of what you could do and the potential market you could reach. This is my primary platform for sales, and we've sold hundreds of thousands of cards, and we love the platform. Subscribe to the channel if you want lots of eBay strategies. And if you're really crazy about eBay selling, join our free email list below, and you'll get some eBay secrets emailed out to you weekly. I promise you'll like it. Number 2, Facebook and Craigslist and other classified sales sites. These are really places for you to sell static items that you can list. You can deal directly with the buyer. It's kind of a personal way of just selling off things individually. They can be great, but it tends to drive a lot less volume because these aren't built for heavy volume, large transactional businesses. High dollar stuff, maybe some boxes of cards, memorabilia. These can be great spots for lower volume transactions. Number 3 would be live auction platforms. Think Whatnot, Loop, eBay, TikTok, Fanatics. Live auction selling is not just a fad anymore. It is really a big part of the sports card hobby. You could do online breaks, you can sell singles, you can sell lots, you can interact with your audience. These platforms are in a good place to provide you the ability to build a business. We've worked with all of them in some capacity and they each have their pros and cons. But if you have a personality and you love live interaction, go explore live auction platforms. Number 4 would be card shows and events. Yes, you can go set up at a card show and sell cards for yourself right now. This really is an amazing way to go learn the hobby lingo really quick. A table at a local card show might cost you $100 and you can set up boxes and singles and simply start wheeling and dealing with buyers. There's definitely an art to this, but just getting out and trying will propel you forward really quick. Now, I know many individuals who only sell at card shows. They like dealing in cash. They prefer the face-to-face. They like the additional opportunity to buy and trade as well. Sports card shows really are a good platform for you to sell and even build your business around. Now, all of these allow you to build out your brand and control the outcome of your success. You get to move the levers of your business the way that you want. Now, it's more work, but there is a lot more upside if you ask me. Category 2 is if you don't want to directly control the outcome and you want to outsource some of the work and simply collect commissions. It means you have to be a really good buyer at this point. But there are 3 popular options in this category within sports cards. The first would be ComC, Check Out My Cards. This is essentially a website dedicated to selling for you. They're really a glorified consignor, but the difference is they allow you to create a profile, select pricing for your inventory, and even take your funds and reinvest into other cards within the ComC environment. You mail your inventory to them. In a few weeks or months, they'll post those cards in your portfolio where you can set your price and then put them up for sale. You can even click a button and cross-list onto eBay via the ComC eBay account. When a card sells, they do all the shipping and the managing for you. This platform has grown a lot in the past 5 years, and it is a viable option if you simply don't want to do the work of selling yourself. The fee structure is not quite as lucrative as doing it yourself, and your audience will be a little smaller most of the time, but if time is a big factor for you, you have to consider this as an option. Number 2 would be auction houses. In the sports car world, there are some great auction houses, and you probably know some of them because they stretch outside of sports cards as well. You've got Golden, you've got Heritage, you've got Robert Edwards, you've got Leland's, you've got Alt, and you probably have a few more that I'm not mentioning, but there are some really good ones out there. Which ones you choose will come down to what you're trying to sell because each of them has their little nuances and special audiences. Using one of these sites will likely require you also to have decent cards to send in. If you do, using one of them is a great way to just offload some of the work. Commissions will be competitive. The exposure for your item is generally pretty good. But with that said, this really is reserved for the best stuff in your inventory, like $100 plus, but more than likely $500 plus. And then finally, number 3 would be consigners. Consigners are individuals or companies that will take your inventory and sell it for you. In fact, we've done this a few times on Chasing Cardboard episodes as a way to just get access and acquire very large collections. Now, in those cases, we've charged anywhere from 20 to 50% in consignment fees, depending on the volume of work required and the type of stuff that we're selling. There are some really good options here if you're looking to get other people working for you. You can submit larger lots and wait 60 to 90 days and start collecting your commission checks from your sales. Now, the advantage here, at least from my perspective, is that you are doing little work and you're just giving up 20 to 30% for someone else to sell it for you, generally on their own eBay page. Okay, so now that we've established some buying and some selling groundwork, it's time for you to start exploring and seeing which of these might work for you. But a lot of those decisions will come down to you deciding what type of reseller you want to be and what strategy that you want to focus on. This is for you to decide based on your strengths, your location, your available capital, and the platforms that you want to interact with. But I want to jumpstart the conversation for you. Let me share with you my favorite 3 strategies for building a sports card business today. Number 1, do what others won't do. 10 years ago, I met a gentleman named Brent who had a huge eBay business under the name of Brent and Becca. Many of you in the hobby will know exactly who he is. But he was hugely successful for years because he did what others wouldn't do. He would purchase 50 to 100 sealed cases of product on release day and would spend days ripping the packs and boxes. Sounds like a blast, doesn't it? As a collector, it's really amazing. Well, most people that you find that do this will spend the time and pull out the high dollar items and set aside the rest because they'll just sell the high dollar items. And I guarantee you this is a way of losing money every single time. But Brent built his business on putting together complete sets and master sets for every product. And over time, he had calculators that would tell him how many base sets and insert sets and parallel sets that he'd be completing with the number of cases he had coming in. He'd then pre-sell many of those to his customer base and essentially pay for his investment with his pre-sales and his complete set inventory. Then the high dollar hits in the product would be icing on the cake and provide nice profit margins on the crazy cards he pulled. This only worked because he was willing to put in the hundreds of hours to sort, package, pre-sell, and manage building sets. Only a handful of people in the hobby would wish these efforts on their worst enemy. It's a brutal commitment. But Brent created an extraordinary business in the hobby because he did things others wouldn't do. So tip number 1 is look for areas in the hobby that others won't do and consider that being an area for you to focus your attention. Number 2, buy large collections. I've built most of my reselling momentum the past 3 years on just taking shots on larger collections. The reason I focused on this is because I really nailed down our back-end sales process. I dialed in my numbers extremely tight, and I can look at a box of 3,000 cards and quickly assess how long it would take to sell that from beginning to end. This allows me to offer prices that don't put me at extreme risk. In addition, I love larger collections because it gives you some freedom to dabble in other areas of the hobby. You can sell lots, you can grade cards, you can find hidden gems that give you the opportunity to learn and obviously drive more profit. Larger collections at the right price are still one of the best ways to make money in the sports card world. With one caveat, large collections are also the easiest way to get extremely overwhelmed. I've probably purchased 20 or 30 good collections from sellers who thought they could resell everything and they just got overwhelmed. Larger collections are a formidable way of building a card business, but you really need to dial in all of the back-end reselling processes to make sure that you don't bury yourself in hundreds of thousands of cards that never get resold. And the third strategy would be buying injured or top players during the off-season. I'm gonna warn you, this strategy is super contagious. If you start going down this path, you'll realize that you love doing it. So here's the strategy. Sports card sales are very much cyclical. They ebb and flow with the seasonality of the economy, but definitely move in conjunction with sports seasons. The second a star player is eliminated from playoff contention or his season ends, the demand for his cards is going to drop. This typically means his prices will fall. Sometimes it's a few percentage points. Other times it could be 20 or 30%. In addition, injuries happen often and no star or rookie is ever immune to the possibility of injury. That's a frustrating part of sports and it can be a huge risk overall when it comes to sports cards. But with any risk, there comes amazing opportunity. That opportunity is using injuries of players that you believe will recover and then buying up as much as you can as their prices drop. Injuries can wreck a player's values in the short term. In fact, it's very common in baseball pitchers, a lot of basketball injuries, and obviously football injuries are crazy common. But if they recovered and had a strong market before the injury, you can do really well with your purchases. A great example is Shohei Ohtani. He's been hurt a few times, and those injuries were amazing buying opportunities. Now, you and I both wish you could go back a few years and snatch up cards from many of the hottest sports players in the world, Ohtani being number one. So whether it's off-season or injury, putting money into players when they simply lose predictable demand can provide you with some lucrative selling opportunities. Side note, these off-season periods are also a great time to get cards graded. Use these periods to grade cards so that you can have them back in time for peak season. Now, keep in mind that your money is going to be tied up longer and the risk can sometimes be greater with off-season or injury investments. But boy, if you get good at this, it can really pay off. So I'd highly recommend digging into this more. Those are 3 strategies for you to consider adding to your idea list when you look at getting involved in selling sports cards. Let me close by telling you a common trap that sports card resellers can fall into. It's the idea that you can somehow get rich quick in this industry, because you can't. Trying to win at sports card reselling by ripping a bunch of boxes, hoping for a huge card that'll change your finances, is a surefire way to be unhappy and to lose money. That's gambling, and it's a real problem within the sports card community. Don't fall into that trap. You can build a formidable reselling side hustle by doing things the right way. Be methodical, make sound decisions, incorporate your own collecting into the journey. If you really focus on this and you do it the right way, it'll both allow you to build something sustainable and also allow you to appreciate the sports card hobby in a very genuine way. Before you go, if you want this entire episode in written format, just type email in the comments below and you'll automatically get a link to download the written format. Thanks so much for watching.